Hello everyone, this is the second in a series of Unforgotten Heroes, and today I'd like to speak about the principal of my school, Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, when I was still in Long Beach, Rabbi Dr. Armin Friedman, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. He wasn't my teacher, so I can't tell you what he did in class. I never heard one class from him. But I'd like to share the following. That wasn't in class, but rather by example. Rabbi Friedman was never seen without a suit and a tie. Not a sports jacket like many other teachers. Suit, totally pressed, and a tie. On weekdays, and even on Sunday when we had half a day of learning. And I always wondered why. Maybe because of his image. Many of you have seen me walk around with a suit and a tie. As a matter of fact, my Rebbe Rav Rakefet already made fun of me and said the following.
So I mentioned, why does Yeshua Grinstein wear in his pocket a handkerchief? So I figured he places Rabbanim all over the world. He wants to show they're up to date. They're part of the modern world. So I have to say, he says to me, I was absolutely right. Indeed, guilty as charged. I started initially to wear this set to make the point to communities that our candidates are high class and professional, and not schlumps who can barely preach. In a word, you guessed right on. However, there's a second stage.
Indeed, maybe it's a message. And the message is, if you look like a schlump and you represent Judaism and the Jews, then those looking at you will also think that Judaism is schlumpy and that the Jews are also schlumpy as well. So if you're representing a school, the Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, and people know who you are, you have to dress in a way that ultimately shows that we are representing a Judaism that's beautiful, a Judaism that's neat, a Judaism that's clean. I never asked him if this is the reason he always wore a suit and tie. But I believe I am correct because of the following story. The procedure of going on a class trip. You go to some public place where people are looking at you. We were not allowed to leave the school building to get on the bus until Rabbi Friedman came and gave the following speech. Quoting from the Gemara in Yuma, he said, there is something called Kiddush Hashem, and there's something else called Chilul Hashem. Now, many of my listeners know those two words based on people that unfortunately were tragically murdered al Kiddush Hashem, or people that unfortunately made the wrong choices in life and made it into jail, which is a Chilul Hashem. But the Gemara in Yuma and the Rambam paskin that there's another kind of Chilul Hashem and Kiddush Hashem, and that is to pay on time, to be an amazing example of the Jewish people. Hiburo banachat im abriot, someone that speaks kindly with other people. That's a Kiddush Hashem, and the opposite, of course, is a Chilul Hashem. And before we left the school building, he would give this speech each and every time. You're about to go to a museum. People are going to look at you because you have kippahs on. You are representing the Jewish people of all generations. And the way you act is the way they are going to perceive what Judaism and what the Jews are. So I believe that his suit and his tie perhaps was a reflection of his constant worry about sanctifying God's name, or God forbid, desecrating it. And only with those words in our ears did we go on the bus. You can well imagine that everyone thought twice before touching something in a museum that says don't touch, or running around when you're not supposed to run around. Because the words of Rabbi Friedman reverberated in your ears. The Chazan in Musaf of the Yomim Noraim, of the high holidays, says the words, Einei amcha bam tluyot. The eyes of the nation are upon you. Ve'eineihem lecha meyachalot, and they are all hoping that you will be successful. That's exactly the feeling that anyone that went on a class trip had in their mind as they exited the school to the big world. And maybe that's the reason that I feel so that it's so important to walk around neatly dressed. Because you're not just representing yourself, you're representing the Jewish people, especially when you're in a foreign land outside of Israel. But there's a third image of Rabbi Friedman. Not just a suit and tie, and not just Kiddush Hashem and Chilul Hashem, lunch. So in a school, because the day starts early, ends around late afternoon, there's lunch. This is the scene in the lunchroom. Rabbi Friedman comes in, he goes to the garbage, and he starts taking out of the garbage half-eaten sandwiches, half-eaten apples, and starts saying, what would your mother think when she prepared this for you? You just throw it out. This is a Holocaust survivor who I do not know what he went through during those tragic years, that looks in the garbage and says, you know how many Jews can survive from this? My revered Rebbe and mentor, Moriva Rabbi, Rav Amital, said,
עד שמצאתי זה לחם מעופש מחודשים, וזה הספיק לי שבמשך שנים שהתיישבתי לאכול, ראיתי על השולחן פרוסת לחם, חשבתי כמה ימים אפשר לחיות.
That he only didn't have food a day after Yom Kippur. And he was looking and looking, and he found a piece of bread that had endless mold on it for months. And they scraped away the mold, and they were able to sustain himself, him and his cousin. So he always said that since then, every time he sees a piece of bread on the table, he starts making a cheshbon, a calculation in his mind. How many Jews can survive from this piece of bread, and for how many days? Now, this is not just trauma. This is a man who tells you, you're living in a country where, thank God, you're able to bring lunch to school. Appreciate it. Don't, I repeat, don't throw it away. And finally, priorities. My father, Zichrono Livracha, told me that when he met with Rabbi Friedman for me to get into the school, so we met with him in his office. I had to read a Hebrew text and explain it. I made a mistake. I didn't know that atah with an ayin meant now. I translated it as you, and he corrected me very, very happily and with warmth. And then after the bechina, I left the room, and he stayed there with my parents. And my father later told me that there was no talk about the scholastic requirements of the school. There was no talk about getting into this school, that school. The whole conversation surrounded what values are you imbuing in your children. That's it. And when he was satisfied, I got into the school. I barely saw him in his office. He was always walking around. I saw him sat in his office, but he was walking around the school. He was there when we came in the morning. He was there at dismissal. He was walking the halls. Always walking, not running. Always with dignity. And I don't recall him ever yelling, screaming, shouting. His very image, Kulo Omer Kavod. When your priorities are straight, even young students can pick up on it. You're in a school with students from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You're going to waste your time in your office. You can do that later at night. You can do that on Sundays in the afternoon. You don't have to do that when students are around you and you have the ability to influence them. And maybe the day that priorities were put in the right place was Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. I never saw Rabbi Friedman daven. I don't think he joined the minyan in the school, which were for 7th and 8th graders. But there were 2 days a year in which the entire school davened together, not in their classrooms, not in their own respective places. The entire school had an assembly that was just a minyan, Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim. And Rabbi Friedman was not there to supervise. He was there to daven with us. And those were the 2 days in which he made it clear to every student, we as a school come together to give thanks to God for these 2 miracles. The Ramban, Nachmanides, famously says that the words Mikra Kodesh that we say so often on Yom Tov is literally translated as holy assemblage, because, says the Ramban, that's the day in which Jewish people come together in order to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for this holy day. And Rabbi Friedman felt that Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim require that indeed the entire school come together to give thanks to Hashem for these 2 days. That's putting your priorities in the right place. And it's no wonder that Rabbi Friedman eventually made Aliyah to Israel. The bulk of his family all live here. He didn't see a difference between an 8th grader, a 7th grader, a 1st grader, or whatnot. On the first day of school, he came into every class. He read off the roll sheet. He looked at every student before he checked off his name. This happened every year. It wasn't a difference. And he would put in little comments to encourage you. He came into class, tall, as I mentioned, suit and tie, totally pressed. Kulo Omer Kavod, the entire class stood up for him. Then we all sat down and he read off the names. And each name he looked up, looked at the person, looked up, looked at the person, and put in a comment like, nice, good. And indeed, at a graduation of 8th grade or a graduation from kindergarten, he was there, he spoke, he made it his business to be there. I finally met him years later, after he made Aliyah, on a bus to Alonshvut. And I started to talk. He had no idea who I was. And when I started to mention my name and where I came from, he remembered very quickly. And he said, I remember you as a little boy, so therefore I don't recognize you as an adult. But the fact that he remembered me as a little boy showed that every last Jewish child was important to him. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbos, Daf Kuf Yud Tet Amud Bet says that one of the reasons that Jerusalem was destroyed, one of the reasons that we have 3 weeks, 9 days, Tisha B'Av, and all the fast days for the temple, was because in Jerusalem they stopped schooling young children. And indeed the Gemara says on the other side of it, Ena olam mitkayem, the world is only in existence, ela b'shvil hevel tinakot shel beit rabban, because of the words coming out of school children. School, he founded it in the 50s, and he stayed there. Didn't look for another job for his entire life. Talking about decades. At the Shiva, his son, Rav Mordechai Friedman, a Rebbe in Yeshivat Har Etzion, where I was privileged to learn, told me the man never asked for a raise. He had a parnasa good enough. And he said, how can I ask for a raise? I'm going to ask Balabatim for money for the school, and I'm going to ask for a raise? The man came to the school and never, ever asked for a raise, never looked for another job, stayed where he was, because he understood I have to do my part to make sure this world continues. Bishvil hevel tinakot shel beit rabban. And finally, consistency. My Rebbe Rav Amital used to be fond of quoting the Medrash that no one ever found in the introduction of the Ein Yaakov to his Perush on all the Agadata and Shas and all the stories in the Talmud. That there was a debate between rabbis, which is the most important verse in the Torah. And they go back and forth, Shema Yisrael, V'aftal Kamocha, and finally one guy says, Et hakeves echad ta'aseh b'boker, v'et hakeves hasheni ta'aseh ben ha'arbayim. The 2 korbanot tamid, the 2 tamid sacrifices that were brought in the temple each and every day, that's the most important verse in the Torah. And the Medrash says he won. My Rebbe Rav Armin H explained that means that consistency is more important than the big party, the amazing anniversary, or whatnot. Only if you learn Torah all year can you celebrate the anniversary of giving of the Torah on Shavuos. And only if a couple's married to each other all year can they celebrate an anniversary once a year. Consistency was exactly the life of Rabbi Friedman. He never left his job. He founded the school and he stayed there until he retired. He was there every day. He never changed his dress code. Consistency is difficult, but consistency is necessary, because only upon consistency can you build a special party and whatnot. May his memory be a blessing first and foremost to his amazing family, all generations. Number 2, may his memory be a challenge to his thousands of students that went through the threshold of HALB that he founded with his 4 fingers, trying to live up to the ideals that he not only preached but practiced. Number 1, let your external image portray what Judaism is. Be neat, be clean, because that's the image that people will see. Representing Judaism. Don't have a stain on your clothing. As the Gemara says, a true Talmid Chacham doesn't have a revav al bigdo. Understanding that what they see externally can be a desecration of God's name, God forbid, or a sanctification of it. Of representing Judaism properly. Remember, you're sanctifying God's name constantly, or you can do the opposite. Everyone's looking at you. Number 2, you're living in a world of bounty. Don't waste the food. Appreciate it. Number 3, make sure your priorities are straight. Yes, Israel has many challenges and it's imperfect. But don't forget to put the priorities straight and thank God for this miracle, with all the problems that hopefully we'll deal with successfully. And finally, not easy, but be consistent. Consistency is the basis of everything else. Rabbi Armin H. Friedman, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, a man who founded the Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, which, thank God, thrived from an elementary school to 2 high schools, a boys and a girls, all because of his vision and his consistency of being there for decades. And may we, the students of Rabbi Friedman, that had the zchut of seeing such a person each and every day, take to heart the words and the ideals that he lived by and lived for. And if we do this, we know the amazing school he brought into the world and the amazing ideals he brought into that school continue to live above and beyond his own lifetime.
Jetzt auf Feier moi die Freibad.